The galactic chamber was carved from moonstone and burning ambition. Spires of gold and crystal speared upward into an artificial atmosphere, gleaming beneath the sterile lights of the triumvirate crown. Around the curved perimeter, the representatives of 49 sentient species sat robed in their ceremonial insignia, their collective presence exuding centuries of order, diplomacy, and domination. Silence reigned, taut and brittle. Into that silence walked a man in a black suit. He strode through the open center of the chamber with the measured elegance of someone who didn't need to impress anyone. The soft click of polished shoes echoed against the marble floor, now dyed a ceremonial red for the occasion. No entourage followed him. No translation drones hovered at his side. No honor guards flanked his arrival. He came alone, a diplomatic envoy from Earth, a planet still considered a political infant, though capable enough to be feared in the dark corners of unspoken reports. He was tall, but not towering. His skin was pale under the floodlights, his dark hair meticulously combed back. Not a wrinkle touched his sharp-pressed suit, and the briefcase he carried in his left hand looked almost ornamental, sleek, smooth, and completely out of place among the towering alien weaponry mounted behind each seat of power. A single silver tie clip shone like a blade. Some among the council whispered telepathically. Others blinked in semaphore or tapped encoded messages beneath the seats. This wasn't what they expected. Not from humans. Not from a species that had begged for inclusion only 20 cycles ago and now demanded a seat on the high circle. The man stopped precisely at the center of the floor, where the ancient sigil of unity was embedded in obsidian. He did not bow. He did not nod. He simply looked up, his gaze sweeping the tiers of alien rulers, as if evaluating something he'd seen 1,000 times before. "I am Callan Ward," he said. His voice was low, clear, and unhurried. Envoy of Earth, bearer of the Phoenix Mandate, empowered to speak on behalf of the Terran Accord. The chamber remained silent. Not a chirp from the avian Hecary. Not a rustle from the scaled-shouldered Drosh. Even the ever-breathing war filters of the Krolin turned still. It was not deference that held them. It was calculation. They watched him the way predators watch another predator. Confused by the shape, yet cautious of the possibility, Callan let the silence stretch. He understood the weight of stillness in these rooms, the way tension gathered behind a breath and turned into fear if no one exhaled first. "Earth seeks to formalize diplomatic trade," he continued, "to initiate non-aggression pacts with key systems, to discuss its contribution to regional stability." Murmurs stirred. A laugh, not human, chittered from the upper tier. A Thoraxian delegate leaned forward, his mandibles twitching. "And what does Earth offer?" The alien asked, voice translated to mechanical resonance. "Minerals? Water? Pretty blue stones? The galaxy has no shortage of ambition, little envoy." Callan's gaze flicked upward. "We offer restraint." That halted the next wave of murmurs. A few delegates shifted. A Bronner ambassador blinked twice, her huge ocular membranes narrowing. Restraint was not a common trade commodity. Callan adjusted his cuff. Humanity learned late what others learned early. That peace is not the default state of intelligent species. It's a discipline. We offer ours. From a hidden alcove behind a grand seat, an unseen voice spoke. This time, the tone was slow, deliberate, and ancient. Your world was a battlefield of its own making. How can you speak of peace when you are forged in war? Callan's head tilted slightly, as though hearing something from far away. Because we remember what it cost. And we know what happens when it's forgotten. A subtle ripple passed through the chamber, barely visible, but tangible to those attuned. A wave of suspicion. On the far wall, beneath a crimson banner, something shifted. One of the guards moved too quickly for ceremony. The smell of ionized metal crept into the air. It was a Hecary ambassador who finally broke protocol. She stood, feathers raised like a threat display. "This is not a negotiation," she hissed. "This is a tribunal." Callan didn't blink. No one mentioned a trial. A metallic chime echoed from the central dais. The red banners dropped, revealing turreted cannons and auto-targeting drones now trained inward. From hidden recesses in the floor, armored troops emerged, silent, armored, and in synchronized step. The entire chamber shifted from political to tactical in the span of a breath. Callan turned his head slightly, as though observing the change in atmosphere, the way one might note the weather turning before a storm. The central voice returned, colder now. You came under the flag of diplomacy, but your presence here is a threat. Earth has violated containment protocols. Your species grows faster than sanctioned. You have refused to share military disclosures. We do not fear you, but we cannot ignore you. Callan let out a quiet sigh. It was the first genuine emotion he'd shown. You never invited me here to talk, he said. No, said the voice from the shadows. You were never meant to leave. Silence fell again. And then Callan dropped the briefcase. It didn't crash. It didn't clang. It landed softly, a thud that barely echoed. But what followed was a hiss of unfolding metal, the emergence of sleek, matte black plating, the unfurling of mechanisms far beyond any known Terran export. Armor crawled up his arms, segmented plates sliding over muscle like a second skin. His jacket vanished into a composite shell. His left eye glowed faintly red. The suit reconfigured, and in less than a heartbeat, the diplomat became something else entirely. Gasps erupted. Some counselors stood. Some reached for weapons. Others froze. Callan looked up one final time. You should have asked what to send when words fail. And then the first shot was fired. It didn't come from Callan. It came from one of the panicked guards, whose trembling claw twitched just enough to break the fragile standoff. The bolt streaked toward the envoy, who wasn't there anymore. He moved like physics didn't apply. In the space between seconds, he was behind the nearest soldier, disarming him with a motion too fast for retinal processors. The soldier collapsed, and Callan caught the weapon midfall, pivoted, and fired. The air cracked, and a Bronner diplomat exploded in a cloud of bioluminescent gore. Panic shattered the chamber. As screams echoed off the spires and blood splattered the obsidian crest beneath his feet, Callan Ward walked forward, not hurried, not wild, but inevitable. Soldiers charged. He flowed through them like a shadow wearing skin, each motion precise, economic, brutal. Heads fell. Limbs flew. The red carpet soaked deeper. He didn't look angry. He didn't look triumphant. He looked like gravity, like something that couldn't be argued with. Only survived. If you were lucky. The council broke apart. Some fled. Others tried to fight. The doors sealed shut. In the observation tier, a young Ilari envoy whispered into her comlink, her eyes wide with horror. It wasn't an envoy, she said. It was a sentence. And still, through the chaos and death, Callan Ward walked, step by step, death in a suit, heading toward the throne, toward the voice, toward the one who had thought this chamber could contain Earth's fury. It was not war he brought. War, wow. Smoke curled like fingers around the rafters of the chamber, thick with ash and vaporized alloy. The once pristine pillars of the council hall were scorched black, pitted with the marks of ricocheted fire. Drones lay in pieces, strewn like broken insects, their optics still flickering as if trying to record the end. The red carpet, still visible in patches, was now more blood than fabric. Callan Ward stood at the foot of the high throne. The silence that followed the massacre was not peace. It was the recoil of power, the moment between an exhale and a scream. A few council members remained, stunned, hiding, bleeding. Others were no longer recognizable. What had taken 1,000 years to build had been dismantled in less than 7 minutes by a single man in a reconfigurable suit. He looked up. The throne was perched atop a dais flanked by golden banners. Behind it, the one who had spoken most during the trial, Chancellor Raven of the Orion Triad, still sat, though not from pride. His lower limbs were damaged, crushed beneath collapsed masonry. His breathing came and burst through his species' external lung sacs. The ornate diadem on his head had cracked. Even so, his gaze burned with the venom of someone who still believed himself above death. You, Raven rasped, voice bubbling through fluid. You think this wins you power? Callan ascended the stairs slowly, not as a man in triumph, but as one with a task unfinished. His boots rang with each step. He left red footprints behind. This wasn't about power, Callan replied. It was a correction. Behind him, a surviving Krolin tried to raise a weapon. its multi-jointed limbs shaky. Callan didn't look. His shoulder flicked back, his hand snapped sideways, and the small arm cannon he'd confiscated earlier discharged with brutal finality. The Krolins had exploded like a rotten fruit. He kept walking. I came here with terms. I offered dialogue, but you had already written the ending. You came with threats disguised as diplomacy, Roth Ven spat. Your kind always wears masks. Callan stopped just short of the top stair. And yours wears crowns made of dead empires. The Chancellor coughed violently. A thin black mist sprayed from his fractured mouth. The Council was civilization. Without us, there is only chaos. No, Callan said. Without you, there's a chance. He reached forward and plucked the broken diadem from Roth's brow. It made a metallic sound as it hit the floor. Behind him, scattered survivors began crawling toward the outer exits. He let them go. They weren't targets. Not anymore. He'd been sent with a very specific mission. Deliver the message. Ensure it could never be mistaken as anything else. He turned his back on Roth and the throne. Not because he wasn't dangerous anymore, but because there was nothing left for Roth Ven to take from the galaxy. What remained of the Council's power was already bleeding out onto the polished floor. Callan stepped down, each stride controlled, precise. A voice crackled through his intercoms. Human, young, nervous. Echo 1, this is Watchtower. Come in. You are off schedule. Respond. Callan pressed 2 fingers to his ear. Operation complete. Diplomatic channels have been clarified. A pause. Then, confirming target elimination? He looked back once. Roth Ven still sat, gasping like a fish on a desert rock. Confirmed. Another pause. Extraction point compromised. We can redirect you to fallback vector. No need, Callan said. I'm walking out. You're in hostile territory. They already fired the first shot. Everything after this is just gravity. Static flickered, then silence. He removed the comlink and crushed it in his hand. As he approached the main entrance, a flicker of movement drew his eye. A small figure crouched behind a fallen podium, barely grown, thin-limbed, quivering, an Ilari juvenile. Wide eyes, iridescent skin trembling. Not a soldier, not a target, just a bystander the Council hadn't evacuated. Callan paused. The child looked up, expecting death, expecting the same force that had torn through armed soldiers to erase her next. She didn't run. There was nowhere to run. He knelt. The armor shifted, folding back from his face, revealing calm eyes and a dust-smeared brow. I'm not going to hurt you, he said softly. The girl didn't reply, but her breathing slowed. Not from trust, but confusion. He reached into a compartment on his belt and removed a small disc, a human survival beacon. He activated it, placing it gently beside her. A warm blue light pulsed. Wait here. This will guide someone to you. She looked at the beacon, then back at him. Why did you come here? She asked. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. Callan stood, the helmet resealed around his head, because they forgot we weren't sheep. As he strode to the massive doors, now blown open by concussive force, the light from beyond cast his shadow long behind him, sweeping across the ruined chamber like the closing stroke of a pen. Outside, gunships circled like vultures. Troops scrambled across the plaza. The high circle citadel was no longer a palace. It was a mausoleum with golden bones. A voice rose among the survivors. What do we tell the rest of the galaxy? Another voice, older, uncertain, answered that we fail to understand humanity. A final voice, quieter still. No, that we misjudge their silence. Far above, satellites transmitted footage already being decrypted across 10,000 systems. The envoy had come with no army, no fleet, just a message, and he had delivered it by hand. But even Callan knew this wasn't over. Empires don't die in a single day, and the galaxy would not forget the massacre. His every step now would ripple into future wars, alliances, rebellions. Still, as he walked into the growing light, his only concern was the next move, the next target, the next place where Earth's voice had to be heard, and if necessary, enforced. Behind him, The great doors creaked shut with a moan, sealing the blood inside. And Callan Ward, death in a suit, vanished in the blaze of a rising sun. The wind over the charred skyline of Eltraxis Prime carried the scent of molten alloy, ozone, and something subtler, fear. Not panic. Not the kind that came in screams and stampedes. No, this was a cold, calculating fear that spread through power structures when an apex predator shifts in the shadows. The Galactic Council was not just damaged, it was decapitated. And across the star systems, governments whispered one name not with anger, but with unease. Callan Ward. He stood atop a calm spire, watching carrier ships spiral overhead like vultures orbiting a battlefield. Below, rescue craft picked through the ruins of the council hall, where drones buzz in grief-mapping sweeps and medical personnel cataloged what could be saved and what must be forgotten. It had been 4 days since the envoy walked out of that chamber, and none had dared stop him, not because they lacked firepower, but because they no longer believed it would matter. His suit, now retracted to a slim black exothread woven beneath a civilian coat, shifted as he turned his gaze eastward. The destruction was precise, localized. He hadn't leveled the city. He hadn't burned the archives. He hadn't destroyed the orbiting fleet. He had left the symbols intact, but gutted the heart. That wasn't vengeance. It was messagecraft. A soft chirp vibrated at his wrist. He tapped the comm link and spoke without preamble. "Go," a familiar voice replied. Colonel Mace Sato, Terran Intelligence Liaison. High-level intercept on Line Gamma. You've been marked as a Class S threat in the Shaundrak protocols. The Sovereignty has convened an emergency summit. Full banishment of Earth is on the table. Expected, Callan replied. You're not surprised? I killed 32 dignitaries in a sanctified chamber and left their Grand Speaker hemorrhaging on his throne. If they weren't plotting revenge, I'd think they were softening. May exhaled. Static laced through the line. Command wants you home. Home's not ready. He ended the call. Callan wasn't finished. Not yet. The Galactic Council had been a facade, a masquerade of order hiding the same fear-driven cycles every empire fell into. But behind that curtain were the ones who profited from a lie. They were still breathing, and one of them had just pinged his location. He knew the feeling. It started in the spine, a tingle like cold air before a drop. Subtle, deliberate. A sniper's breath before the exhale. The suit detected it a fraction of a second later. Micro-adjustments in his visual HUD lit up a pulse. Triangular pattern, electromagnetic flux, cloaking field distortion, moving fast. He didn't move. Not yet. The hunter crept forward from the shadows of a collapsed monorail tower. Tall, multi-limbed, cloaked in a refractive mesh that flickered as it passed through heat pockets. A Thyran Stalker-class assassin. One of the Council's black-budget enforcers. Rare, expensive, dangerous. Mr. Ward, the assassin said, voice almost polite. You've caused quite the rebalancing. Callan's eyes remained fixed on the horizon. Is that what we're calling it now? You upset equilibrium. Many are displeased. And many are dead. That too. The Thyran stepped closer. 3 of its 6 limbs poised like a mantis considering the kill. Its voice softened. They offer me your name and coordinates. I came to take your life, but I have seen the footage. Callan glanced at him, slow and deliberate, and I'm deciding whether I value profit or survival. The pause stretched. Callan didn't move. Neither did the assassin. Finally, the Thyran retracted his blades, cloak shimmering back into full opacity. Consider this a professional courtesy, it said. You're no longer prey. Callan nodded. Then disappear before I change my mind. The assassin bowed, a gesture from some long-dead code of mercenary honor, and vanished into the dusk. A heartbeat later, only wind remained. Callan turned back to the spire's edge. His fingers curled over the rail. Below, in the debris fields, children were being pulled from under beams, medics cauterizing wounds, drones patching air conduits. Not everyone who had been in that chamber had deserved death, but none had tried to stop it, either. Silence, as always, had its cost. The The suit whispered a low alert. Data packet intercept. Encrypted. Urgent. Human origin. He tapped to receive. A single line appeared. Target confirmed. Lord Admiral Salus has taken control of the Sovereign Core Council. Coordinates attached. Primary instigator of the directive to terminate Terran ascent. Orders: execute or neutralize. Callan let the message linger on the interface, then blinked it away. Lord Admiral Salus, a name that had surfaced a dozen times in subspace chatter. Rumored architect of the containment doctrine. The strategy to isolate Earth diplomatically, stall its alliances, and, when ready, force internal collapse through proxy rebellion. He hadn't been in the chamber. Too careful for that. Too insulated. The kind of man who made war look like paperwork. But Callan had a gift for closing distance. He descended the spire without haste. Civilians watched him pass, eyes wide, some fearful, others reverent, unsure whether to salute or flee. He ignored them. Every step now was momentum. The next part of the message had already begun writing itself. In the orbiting docking ring, a ship awaited, a Ghost-class interceptor painted in stealth alloys, built for speed and silence. He stepped aboard, let the AI engage pre-flight, and sank into the pilot's seat. As the bay doors shut, the HUD lit with a pulsing blue reticle. Destination locked. Theta Prime, Sovereign Core territory. He leaned back, the hum of ignition surrounding him. The galaxy was watching now. Every species, every colony, every ruler who'd ever hidden behind protocol and ceremonial armor. They had thought Earth would beg for mercy. Instead, it had sent Callan Ward, and he wasn't finished delivering the terms. Theta Prime hung in the void like a gemstone dipped in oil, dark, radiant, faceted with cold lights from orbiting spires and solar collectors. The Sovereign Core's capital world did not sprawl like Veltraxis. It rose, vertical and austere, a fortress masquerading as civilization. Every tower was a command post, every plaza a staging ground. It was not designed to inspire awe. It was designed to enforce hierarchy. Callan Ward stepped off the boarding ramp of the Ghost Interceptor as it docked silently in one of the private rings reserved for high-tier diplomatic vessels. No alarm sounded. No welcome party arrived. No protocols engaged. That wasn't oversight. That was certainty. They knew he was coming. The suit had shifted again, now resembling a sharp charcoal overcoat over woven body armor that moved like silk. His face was clean, his step silent, his weapons hidden in the folds of his presence. The Sovereign Core had declared him a hostile operative, and still, they had not barred his entry, because Salus wanted him here. Security drones tracked his movement without interfering. Biometrics were already compromised. The AI of the dock allowed him passage as if he were sanctioned. That told him everything he needed to know. Salus was not hiding behind protocols or proxies. He wanted a conversation, maybe a monologue, perhaps a warning. Callan would listen, and then decide how it ended. The elevator to the upper tower was seamless. No music, no hum, just the sound of air moving through control pressure zones. The lift opened into a chamber carved of obsidian and quiet arrogance. Glass walls overlooked a continent, endless storms lashing the outer ridges, fractal lightning dancing through monolithic clouds. It was like staring into a war held in permanent pause. Lord Admiral Salus stood with his back to the door, hands clasped behind him. His uniform was unadorned, save for the silver threads denoting authority across 5 systems. He had the posture of a man who had never lost control. The voice that followed did not try to dominate. It merely filled the room. I thought they would send a fleet, a declaration, maybe a new ambassador. Callan said nothing. Salus turned. His face was lean, his features angular, like someone carved from stone and polished by bureaucracy. Instead, they sent the assassin in diplomat's clothing. You made diplomacy impossible, Callan replied. Did I? Or did I simply expose the weakness of your position? Salus gestured to the devastation visible from the window. The council was collapsing long before you arrived. All I did was make sure it collapsed on you. You order my execution. That's not strategy. That's cowardice. Salus smiled. I orchestrated a test. Earth is ambitious, impulsive. You needed to be provoked. And now the galaxy has seen your true nature. The footage is everywhere. The so-called envoy, drenched in blood, body stacked behind him, walking like the embodiment of vengeance. Do you think anyone trusts your peace offerings now? Callan stepped closer. The glass vibrated with the hum of atmospheric tremors far below. You're right, he said. No one sees Earth as naive anymore. Salus's smile faltered. Callan continued. You built your influence by selling fear disorder. You promised a sovereign core stability, control, leverage. But what you gave them was stagnation. Systems suffocating under your caution, your manipulation. Now they see something new. Not chaos, not conquest, but resolve. The Admiral's voice sharpened. What they see is a weapon walking loose. They see a species that settles disputes with annihilation. No, Callan said. They see a species that finishes what others start. There was no lunge, no trigger pulled, no dramatic turn. Callan simply raised his right hand, the palm facing upward. A quiet chirp, almost insignificant, preceded the sudden lockdown of the entire tower. Metal shutters dropped with a hiss across every access point. Lights dimmed. A pulsing red halo flickered in the air above. Salus looked around, startled but not panicked. You activated this? Callan nodded. There's a reason I didn't bring an army. This isn't a siege. It's a closure. A voice spoke over the comm system. Female, precise. May Sato, Lord Admiral Salus. You are now under containment per Directive Hades 5. All comms blocked. All subordinates locked out. No rescue in progress. Salus's jaw tightened. This will provoke war. No, Callan said, stepping forward until only a meter separated them. You've already failed to start one. That's why you're here. Isolated. Surrounded by silence. Because you underestimated what we are when we're not underestimated. Salus struck fast. Years of command had not dulled reflexes. A blade slid from his wrist mount, sleek and humming with plasma edge technology. He drove it forward in a precise arc meant to get a soldier in armor. Callan shifted. The motion was minimal. Shoulders rotating, torso angled. The blade passed beside him, missing flesh by a fraction. He caught Salus's wrist, twisted once, and broke with a sound that echoed like a snapped branch. The blade clattered to the floor. The Admiral didn't cry out. His pride wouldn't allow it. You think killing me fixes anything? Salus hissed. No, Callan said, but it stops the disease from spreading. He drove the strike upward. A narrow dart, small and silver, embedded just beneath the clavicle. Salus staggered back, clutching at his chest. What is this? A toxin encoded to your DNA, Callan replied. Fast, painless, untraceable. They'll call it cardiac failure. Salus fell against the wall, breath ragged. His eyes never lost their hatred. Callan knelt beside him. Your death isn't the message, he said. Your absence is. The Admiral's eyes fluttered. In seconds, he was still. Callan stood and tapped his comm. Extraction, he said. Tower secured. Objective terminated. May's voice returned. Copy. Civilian feeds show no breach. Core command scrambling for explanation. They won't find one, Callan said. Let them invent their own truth. That's always been their strength. The shutters lifted. The lights brightened. Far below, the storms raged as they always had. He turned from the body, the window, and the war that would not come. Not because peace had won, but because power had been redefined. Earth had sent a message. And now, it was time for the galaxy to respond.